Right after I bought a house with a garden, my husband Justin and his mom, Linda, both grinning, told me my in-laws would be moving in with us. They said if I didn't like it, Justin would divorce me. If Linda came, her mean daughter would surely follow. They knew I hated this, but did it anyway. The daily harassment would continue even in the new house. I shuddered at the thought and said, "No, I don't want to live with you." Linda looked at me, raising her eyebrows. She pulled out divorce papers, already signed by Justin. She only cared about getting the house. Their plan had worked, which was terrifying. I struggled to hold back my laughter. Seeing me tremble with my head down, Linda looked victorious. I quietly signed the divorce papers, packed my things, and left the house I dreaded. On moving day, my ex-mother-in-law bombarded me with calls. "Have you realized yet?" she demanded, asking to meet and talk. That was exactly what I wanted. I would meet her and end this myself. I prepared for the final confrontation and headed to face them. My name is Julie. I work at an advertising agency. My husband Larry was introduced to me by Eric, a manager at a newspaper company. I couldn't refuse Eric's offer because I was in a weak position. I was 31 at the time, and after 5 months of dating, I married Larry due to his persistence. I ended up regretting this decision at such an important moment. I think my ex-mother-in-law, Olivia, planned to deceive me from the start. She seemed gentle and kind, but her attitude changed as soon as I married Larry. She dropped the mask of a reasonable older woman and showed her true colors as a cruel mother-in-law. "Hey Julie, what are you doing? I told you to weed the garden after cleaning the dishes." Not a day passed without her shrill voice echoing through the house. I felt exhausted every day. I could barely manage a sigh in response. After the wedding, I agreed to live with my in-laws because Larry insisted. His father had passed away, and Olivia, his mom, had been dealing with a leg injury for years. Larry begged me, saying he couldn't leave his aging mother alone in the old house. But when I got there, I saw Olivia walking around just fine. She said that teaching a daughter-in-law was a mother-in-law's duty and treated me harshly every day. Larry was no help either. Whenever I suggested living separately, he made excuses and avoided the issue. He always did whatever she wanted and never stood up for me when she scolded me. "Yeah, my mom has quite a temper, huh?" he would say. "Stop grinning and help me. This is really hard for me." After getting married, I began to feel intense anxiety and depression. I found myself crying unexpectedly or feeling sick for no reason. After seeing a doctor, I was diagnosed with an adjustment disorder. The thought that every day spent at my in-laws was affecting me badly was truly unpleasant. Despite my feelings, Olivia continued to make unreasonable demands. "Don't be lazy just because it's your day off. Have you finished cleaning the room? You haven't gone shopping yet, have you? Make sure to check the discount stores before you go. Please, Olivia, don't shout at me. I have a headache. I'll do the cleaning and shopping later," I pleaded. "Don't give me that. When you're told to do something, you do it immediately. You're the daughter-in-law, aren't you?" "A daughter-in-law is not a maid," I wanted to retort. Her demands often involved the house itself. Cleaning the gutters, replacing the wallpaper, fixing the splinters in the pillars. The in-laws' house was very old and falling apart. It creaked whenever the wind blew. Each time, she would urge Larry to get a new house. "This place is a rental, you know. We're renting it cheaply from an acquaintance. Just once, I want to live freely in our own home. Don't you think so, Larry?" "I do, but we can't afford it on my salary. A house of our own is just a dream," Larry replied. Olivia grew frustrated with her useless son and took out her frustration on me. "Cook, clean, weed the garden, take me to the hospital." She didn't care that I was exhausted from working full-time. It was no wonder I developed an adjustment disorder. I couldn't help but think that every day. 5 months after moving in with my in-laws, a woman who made my miserable life even worse arrived. Larry's sister Kelly came back after her divorce, bringing her child with her. She said her ex kicked her out, saying he didn't want to see her face anymore. Well, it's my fault really, she admitted. I left my kid alone and slept with my husband's boss. What kind of morals does this woman have? When Kelly saw my shocked face, she smiled a little. Kelly, who looked just like Olivia, acted just like her too. She refused to do any housework and made me clean her room as well. It's only fair, right? I'm raising a child. You wouldn't understand since you haven't given birth, but it's harder than it looks. So thanks in advance for your help, Julie. Kelly didn't work. She lazed around all day. Her care for her child was half-hearted at best. She would lie on the sofa doing nothing. On weekends, her behavior was especially bad. She'd leave her young daughter with me and go to the arcade. Kelly had some bad friends from her wild days, and sometimes started drinking with them in the afternoon. I wished she would at least help with some of the housework, but Kelly did absolutely nothing. She was the type of woman who would do anything to get money for fun. One day, Kelly handed me a drawstring bag. When I looked inside, I saw my dad's cufflinks, a ring, and some vintage lighters. What do you expect me to do with these? I asked. Figure it out. Sell them and make sure you get a good price, okay? Kelly said casually. These were my late father's belongings, meant to be keepsakes, yet Kelly told me to sell them without a second thought. I felt a wave of sadness, especially since she would likely use the money for the arcade. Unable to bring myself to do it, I explained the situation and handed the bag over to Larry. I don't know what he did with his father's keepsakes, and frankly, I don't want to know. When Kelly first returned, many things happened. My belongings frequently went missing after she arrived. Around that time, I also discovered that Larry was probably having an affair. A friend who worked at a different advertising agency saw him in town on a weekend. Larry was walking arm in arm with a flashy young woman. I was furious when I heard the story. I'm working hard from morning till night, even on weekends, and you're out having fun with a young woman. Unbelievable. This is cheating, right? Who is she? Tell me the truth. It's not cheating. She's just a worker from a massage parlor, Larry replied. And how is that any better? You shouldn't be going to such places when you're married, I shouted. Kelly laughed hysterically at our argument. Olivia seemed annoyed, but didn't strongly scold Larry. According to Olivia's logic, if a husband goes to such places, it's because the wife isn't devoted enough. Getting upset over something like that is embarrassing. The problem is you. If you were more devoted to Larry, this wouldn't happen, Olivia said. I don't agree, Olivia. Isn't that a bit unreasonable? I said. This is the norm in this house. Besides, going to places like that or having an affair shows a man's strength. A wife should forgive such things with a big heart, you know. What was normal for them was crazy to me. Forgive visits to those places and affairs? There was no way I could do that. My frustration only grew, and I couldn't just stand by any longer. Determined to change this unpleasant situation, I decided to take action. Olivia and Kelly stayed the same day after day, treating me like a servant. They lounged around on the sofa or floor, raising their voices when they were hungry. Hey, why isn't lunch ready yet? It's already noon. Stop dragging your feet, Julie. You're so slow, it's annoying. Then why don't you make it yourselves? I've been cleaning the garden, airing out the carpets, and shopping with no time to rest, I replied. Don't talk back. Know your place as the daughter-in-law, they snapped. I wasn't even allowed to voice my opinion. I was utterly fed up. I wanted a divorce immediately, but if it were that easy, I wouldn't have been struggling. Larry was introduced to me by Eric, a manager at a newspaper company. I owed a lot to my boss, Richard, who also asked me not to do anything that would embarrass him. Olivia knew this and often used it against me. I was completely stuck between a rock and a hard place. For a while, all I could do was endure. Then, one day, Larry's affair became undeniable. That friend from the other agency got solid proof. The first stage of my plan was complete. I needed to figure out my next move. About a month later, I think it was, Kelly spread out a housing catalog on the dinner table after dinner. From every angle, it was clear that these were items I had put in my bag. Look at this. Julie was planning to buy a house. Wait, did you rummage through my bag? Why? Why would you do that? I demanded. Just be quiet. Oh, it's a nice house, a bit in the countryside, but still. Hey Julie, you should have discussed something like this with me, Kelly said. I had my eye on a house with a garden. As Olivia said, it was in the countryside but looked quite good. I had already visited the place several times and met with the real estate agent. When I admitted this, the three of them became very interested. What? How far along are you in the process? Are you going to buy it? It's cheap and spacious. Not bad at all, Olivia said. Larry added, "Amen, got to be bold. Oh, well, a house with a garden, huh? That's a big decision if you decide to become the head of your own household. I'll support you, and I'll even help a little financially. Wouldn't you like to leave here and live with Julie in your own place?" Olivia said, pretending to be supportive. She was already encouraging Larry before I could say anything. How fake. She had no intention of letting me go easily. When I asked whose name the house would be under, Larry frowned. I'm the head of the household. It will be in my name, of course. Then can I go ahead with the purchase? We'll buy this house, and the two of us will move out, right? I asked. All right, I've decided. I'll buy the house. Go ahead and move forward with the arrangements, Larry finally said firmly. Olivia and Kelly both praised Larry for his decision, but I noticed them exchanging a knowing smile. A few days later, just after buying the house with a garden in the countryside as planned, Larry and Olivia, both grinning, made an announcement. They're moving in too, Larry said. What? But you said we live there alone, I exclaimed. After thinking it over, we decided to live together. You're not going to say no, are you? If you refuse, I'll make Larry divorce you. I wonder what your boss Richard would think of that, Olivia said. There it was, a cowardly move. If Olivia came, Kelly would surely follow. I shuddered at the thought of daily harassment continuing even in the new house. No way, I absolutely refuse. I have no intention of living there with you, I said firmly. You don't seem to understand your position, Olivia said, her eyebrows shooting up in anger, her face red, veins bulging at her temples. She pulled out divorce papers from somewhere, and Larry's part was already signed. Her face showed she didn't care about anything as long as she got the house. If you're really going to refuse, then sign here, she said. All right, I will. I'll sign. Let's get divorced. I've had enough, I replied. What? Hey, Julie, are you sure about this? Larry asked. Leave her. A useless woman like this is just going to make you angry. You're young. You'll find a new wife soon enough, Olivia said harshly. I quietly signed the divorce papers. Olivia looked triumphant, but she had no idea how I felt. My plan had worked perfectly, which was terrifying. I struggled to hold back my laughter. A few days after I moved into my new apartment, I started getting a lot of calls from Olivia. Checking my calendar, I realized today was their moving day. She must have figured it out. The phone kept ringing nonstop, typical Olivia. Ignoring the calls didn't help, they kept coming. Finally, I answered due to her persistence. Olivia didn't even say hello, she just started yelling. Julie, how could you do this? What kind of house did you make us buy? Hello, Olivia. Calm down. What are you talking about? I don't understand, I replied. Don't play dumb. This house, you knew it was defective when you bought it, didn't you? Didn't you? She screamed. That's right. The house I chose had problems. The ground was unstable, causing the land to sink. Even a new house could have doors and windows that wouldn't close properly after a few years. There were old mining tunnels nearby that caused these issues. The locals knew about this and built their houses on stable land. Only clueless newcomers fell into this trap. I used this problem-ridden house to trick those three. It was tough to find a reasonably priced defective house, even with the help of a real estate agent. I also made sure Kelly would steal the real estate catalog from my bag. I had deliberately left my bag in an easy-to-steal place. They fell right into the trap and moved in. It was hard to keep from laughing when I signed the divorce papers. I wanted to tell them everything, but I couldn't. I played dumb. A defective house? That can't be right. There must be some mistake, I said, feigning innocence. What is with that attitude? So fake. Just come over here, Olivia demanded. No, honestly, I don't ever want to see you again, I replied firmly. What? What did you say? She yelled. There was no way I wanted to see that unreasonable family again. I told her I wouldn't meet them even if they paid me. Then Larry took over after she clicked her tongue. Julie, please think about our situation a little, Larry said. I could say the same to you, Larry. Did you ever think about my feelings? No, you didn't. I was always isolated, I retorted. I'm sorry. I'll apologize. Just tell me where you moved to, he pleaded. Why would I tell you that? If you showed up, I'd have to move again. I want to cut all ties with you, I said. The conversation went nowhere. Eventually, Olivia and the others started making even more outrageous claims. They said the divorce was invalid and that we were still family. I had 2 colleagues sign as witnesses and submitted the divorce papers to the city hall. They are valid, and there's no way it's invalid. How unreasonable can they be? Anyway, they kept insisting, just meet with us once, Julie. We need to settle this properly. Olivia and Larry were determined to meet and talk. I knew they would keep calling if I kept refusing. I had no choice but to meet them to put an end to it myself. Fine, I'll meet with you once, I said. Thank you, I owe you one, Larry replied. But I'll choose the time and place, okay? I couldn't risk being ambushed or followed. I needed to stay in control to ensure my safety. After making careful plans, I arranged to meet the 3 of them at a cafe. I arrived at the cafe 15 minutes late. Olivia and Kelly were already furious from waiting. Larry had a strained smile on his face. As expected, they were predictable. How dare you keep your elders waiting? It's so disrespectful, Olivia shouted. I don't want to hear about respect from you. So what do you want? I replied. What's with that attitude? It's infuriating. We're stuck with a defective house because of you. Take responsibility, Kelly chimed in. I told you, I don't know anything about that. You decided to move in on your own, didn't you? I responded. Olivia faltered, unable to deny that she and Kelly had willingly moved into the defective house. Their previous home was being renovated, so the only place they had to live was the defective house. If you're done, I have something to say. Olivia, I will be suing you for damages. Prepare yourself, I said. What? Damages? Suing? Why? What did I ever do to you? Tell me clearly, Olivia demanded. You mentally tormented me to the point of developing an adjustment disorder, I said, showing them a copy of my medical diagnosis. The 3 of them stared at it intently. Olivia's eyes widened. She probably never imagined I had been seeing a psychiatrist. You never thought about how much your words hurt others, did you? It was very painful for me. I felt nauseous and cried a lot. It was really tough, I continued. That's because you're weak. You were a lousy daughter-in-law and deserved it. Isn't that right? Olivia retorted. Calling me a lousy daughter-in-law repeatedly is slander. Slander is punishable by up to a year in prison or a fine of up to $5,000, I said firmly. What? That's ridiculous, Olivia exclaimed. What's ridiculous? I countered. Olivia didn't understand the seriousness of her actions. She had no idea how harmful her behavior was or how much her verbal abuse had hurt me. You also did other things that are punishable by law. You threatened me multiple times, saying you'd tell Richard about the divorce. That's extortion, I added. Wait, isn't that a bit exaggerated? Larry interjected. It's not exaggerated at all. By the way, extortion carries a penalty of up to 3 years in prison or a fine of up to $5,000, I replied. I won't back down on this, I said firmly. All right, wait a minute. Kelly stepped in, her eyes sharper than usual. She had the look of someone who wouldn't be intimidated by threats. What is this? Scaring my mom by taking advantage of her ignorance? Do you have any proof of these so-called slanders and threats? Yes, I do. I've been recording everything, I replied. What? Recording? Kelly's eyes widened. Yes, I had been recording with my phone's voice memo the entire time I lived at my ex-in-law's house. I have plenty of audio recordings, including data of Olivia's abusive language. Submitting this as evidence would confirm the charges of slander and threats. Did you really think I'd just take it? It's not just Olivia. Kelly, you're also guilty. You'll be held accountable too. What? Why me? What did I do? Kelly's voice rose in panic. Think about it. Haven't you committed any crimes? Or are you saying you haven't caused me any trouble? Of course not. Don't be ridiculous. Kelly insisted she was innocent. I showed her the screen on my phone. Kelly's face turned pale. It showed her rummaging through my bag, nervously glancing around while searching the contents. What's that? How did you record this? Because my belongings frequently went missing after you arrived. Makeup, accessories, clothes, bags. I set up a hidden camera. This is awful. How could you do that? You're just a daughter-in-law. Unbelievable. Who's the one overstepping boundary here? Let me inform you about the penalty for theft: up to 12 years in prison or a fine of up to $5,000. I'll be contacting the police, I said firmly. Kelly's mouth opened and closed. She wanted to argue, but she couldn't. She looked completely helpless. I had kept track of all my missing items. Knowing the exact extent of the damages would make it easier for the police and lawyers to act. If I was going to do this, I would do it thoroughly. I was determined not to let these three off the hook. Finally, it was Larry's turn. He shrank back under my glare. If there was anyone I couldn't forgive the most, it was him. I believed a marriage was about mutual support, but Larry, you saw things differently, didn't you? From start to finish, you were always my enemy, weren't you? Enemy? No, I never meant that. Not at all. Please believe me. Even today, I was trying to mediate as much as possible, Larry pleaded. Sure, enough with the lies. I don't need your mediation, I said coldly. Larry was a cowardly man. He always sided with the stronger party. He had always been with Olivia and Kelly. Even now, he was trying to placate me to save himself. If he had been a slightly better man, maybe, but it was too late now. I would have stayed married if he had just said, "Let's move away and live just the two of us." I might have done that. The name of your affair partner? I believe it's Nicole. What? How did you know? Larry stammered. I had a friend investigate. She's good at that. I even have pictures of you and Nicole entering a hotel together. Look, here they are, I said, showing the photos. No, don't show them. Don't show them. Larry tried to stop me from showing the screen. He didn't want his mother and sister to see his affair. But why should it matter? Their morals were already broken. They were all like-minded. I put my phone and the copy of the diagnosis back in my bag. I had shown all the evidence I needed. Olivia, Larry, and Kelly looked defeated and drained of energy. If they did anything wrong, they'd be reported to the police. They seemed scared, but I was fully intending to consult the police regardless of their actions. I believe the police will come by eventually. Don't try to run. It will only make things worse. And make sure you don't follow me. Understood, I warned. Julie, don't be so cold. We were married until recently, remember? Larry pleaded. Yes, and honestly, I think marrying you was a huge mistake. I feel so relieved we're not a couple anymore. If you follow me, I'll press charges. So don't wait outside my office or contact me unless it's absolutely necessary, I said firmly. I made a few simple agreements with the three of them and left the cafe. Even after I left, they sat there looking dejected. You can't stop people from talking. The news of Larry's divorce quickly spread at his company. The reasons his infidelity and mistreatment of me spread along with it. As a result, Larry faced cold treatment at work. The person who introduced us was Eric from the affiliated newspaper company. Naturally, Larry lost his trust and was viewed harshly. Unable to endure the hostile environment, Larry eventually quit. He struggled to find new employment, and his relationships with his mother and sister became strained. About a year after our divorce, Larry reappeared in front of me. He called out to me as I was leaving work, and I turned to see a shabby-looking man standing there. "Larry, I barely recognized you," I said. "I know people say my face has changed lately," Larry said. He looked like he had been through a lot. Olivia and Kelly were convicted and fined, and I had claimed alimony from Larry. They must be struggling financially now. They still had to pay off the mortgage on the defective house, so things were tough. "How are Olivia and Kelly?" I asked. "They're alive, just barely hanging on. They're both working now because they have to, or we wouldn't survive. They always say they want to go back to the old life, relying on my and your income. They haven't changed a bit. They're like parasites," Larry said. Cutting ties with them was definitely the right decision. I thought he might argue, but he didn't. Larry sighed deeply and apologized to me. "I'm really sorry for everything. I deeply regret it. I was a fool. You were right. I should have always been on your side. I must have been out of my mind." "Your whole family has been out of their minds from the start," I replied coldly. "Please, let's live together again. I'll cut ties with them for real this time." "You're the only one for me," he pleaded. "Oh really? Too bad. I'm seeing someone else now." "Even if I wasn't, I'd never take you back," I said firmly. When I said that, Larry collapsed to his knees, but his pitiful act didn't work on me anymore. If I were less well-mannered, I would have spat on him right then. I left him there and went home. He never contacted me again. The real estate agent who helped me told me that Olivia, Larry, and Kelly's lives had fallen apart. They blamed each other for their poverty, which worsened their relationships. Neighbors heard shouting and glass breaking from their house almost every night. They berated and tormented each other but couldn't break free. It was nothing short of hell. They were quite isolated in the community, with no one wanting to interact with them. Eventually, they will likely sell their unsellable house for next to nothing and end up homeless with just their debts. I can clearly imagine the three of them huddled together, cursing each other under the cold sky. One day, I'd like to see their miserable state when they've hit rock bottom. Meanwhile, I'm living a happy life that feels almost unreal. It's all thanks to my new partner, the one I mentioned to Larry. He's a successful salesperson at a big trading company, a mature man with a gentle nature who respects others. He's also divorced, like me. We're planning a small wedding soon. My first marriage was a really bitter experience. Even now, I sometimes tear up when I remember the hardships. But even during those times, I feel warmth and comfort when I lean on him. This is where I belong. I took a long detour, but I finally arrived. That's how I feel. Because of the struggles I've been through, I can now be kinder to others. I want to use my experiences to live a positive and bright life. That's how I feel these days.